In 1996, Grant Morrison almost died because of a comic book. Not a printing accident, not a paper cut gone septic. Morrison was hospitalized with a staph infection spreading across their face, collapsed lung, septicemia, doctors giving them 2 days to live. The strange part, months earlier, Morrison had written almost exactly this happening to their main character, a 6-issue torture arc, flesh-eating bacteria, a face being destroyed. Morrison's explanation? The comic was a spell, and they'd forgotten to write themselves out of the torture arc. This is the story of the Hyper-Sigil, a technology for editing reality using fiction as the interface. What it is, how Morrison built it, what it cost them, and the question you should probably be asking, are you already inside one? Let's find out.
This is an artificially aware original production.
To understand Hyper-Sigils, you need to understand sigils. And for that, we go back to Austin Osman Spare, an English artist occultist who in 1913 published what chaos magicians still consider the foundational technique. Spare's insight was simple. Your conscious mind gets in the way. You want something, but the wanting itself creates resistance, lust for result. The psychic sensor kicks in and says that's not how reality works, and the desire dies in committee. Sigils bypass the sensor. The method, write what you want, remove the vowels, remove repeated consonants, rearrange what's left into an abstract glyph, something your conscious mind can't read as language anymore. Then charge it. Spare recommended achieving what he called vacuity, a blank state. Exhaustion works, fear works, sexual climax works. The moment the mind goes empty, you fire the sigil into the subconscious, then forget it completely. The sigil works precisely because you're not watching it work. Practitioners report coincidences, opportunities appearing, circumstances shifting. Skeptics call it confirmation bias. You charged a sigil for a new job, you got a new job, but you also applied to 40 companies. The sigil just made you notice the one that worked. Fair enough. But here's the problem Spare couldn't solve. Sigils are static. One symbol, one charge, one moment of vacuity, then you're done. What if you wanted something bigger? Something that required sustained pressure over years? Grant Morrison asked that question, and their answer was the Invisibles. The Invisibles ran from 1994 to 2000, 59 issues published by DC's Vertigo imprint. On the surface, it's a comic about anarchist freedom fighters battling interdimensional oppressors. Weird, dense, aggressively countercultural. But Morrison was explicit from the start. This wasn't a comic about magic. It was magic using comics as the delivery mechanism. In their essay Pop Magic, Morrison explained the concept they'd invented. The Hyper-Sigil is a sigil extended through the fourth dimension, a super-sigil. It's a dynamic miniature model of the magician's universe, a hologram, microcosm, or voodoo doll, which can be manipulated in real time to produce changes in the macrocosmic environment of real life. The mechanism required identification. You don't just write a character, you become them. Morrison called this the fiction suit. King Mob, the protagonist, was Morrison's fiction suit. a bald, leather-clad chaos magician assassin. When the series started, Morrison had a full head of hair. They shaved it, adopted the fetish wear, started introducing themselves at conventions as their own character. Gerard Way, who later created the Umbrella Academy, met Morrison during this period and recalled, "He was King Mob. He had actualized into this piece of fiction." The identification went deeper than costume. King Mob uses the pen name Kirk Morrison in the comic, a direct author insertion. Morrison admitted in the letters column that King Mob only got laid all the time because the comic was a magic spell, and making the main character get laid would get them laid in turn. This wasn't subtext. This was the stated operating principle. And Morrison didn't keep the method to themselves. The letters column, called Invisible Ink, became an instruction manual. Morrison taught readers basic sigil technique, explained how to charge them, invited participation. When sales dropped sharply and cancellation loomed, Morrison organized what they called a Wankathon, a mass sigil charging ritual scheduled for Thanksgiving 1995. Readers were instructed to simultaneously masturbate while focusing on a sigil for the series' continuation. The series was never canceled. It ran for 2 more volumes. Artist Jill Thompson reportedly joked that the mass working was what put Morrison in hospital. The cost came 6 months later. Issues 17 through 19 of Volume 1 are called Entropy in the UK. In this arc, King Mob is captured by the enemy, tortured across 6 issues, shot in the stomach, lung collapsed, and, crucially, brainwashed to believe his face is being eaten by necrotizing fasciitis. Morrison wrote those pages, drew those panels, sent them to the printer. Months later, Morrison developed a facial abscess that escalated into a full-body staph infection. Septicemia, collapsed lung, 2 days to live. From an interview in Arthur magazine, "Things worked out for me in odd, unlikely, synchronistic ways, and thanks to some friends, my mom found me a doctor who saved my life. He swung it to get me a hospital room after diagnosing me with advanced septicemia and a collapsed lung." Morrison's interpretation was immediate. The fiction suit had worked exactly as intended. They'd written damage into their avatar without building in safeguards. The Hyper-Sigil executed the pattern. It didn't care about intent. The recovery method was the same as the injury, writing. As I lay dying, I wrote my character out of trouble and somehow survived. Writing became a way of keeping myself alive. After the hospital, Morrison made deliberate changes, gave King Mob a better life, romantic fulfillment, retirement from violence, a happy ending, and reported that their own circumstances improved correspondingly. By the series finale in 2000, Morrison was giving lectures about the technique, not as theory, as documented method with documented results, including the scar they still carry. So why would this work? We have 3 frameworks. Pick the one that fits your ontology. Framework 1, psychological. Writing detailed narratives about desired outcomes increases attention to relevant opportunities. The reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters perception, starts flagging goal-aligned information. You notice doors that were always there. Your motivation increases because you've already rehearsed the path. Self-fulfilling prophecy with extra steps and better aesthetics. The illness correlation? Stress. Morrison was producing a monthly comic, doing intense magical work, probably not sleeping. Bodies break down. The timing was coincidence filtered through pattern matching. Framework 2, informational. Reality as editable substrate. The universe as a kind of hologram or simulation that responds to coherent signal. Fiction creates templates. Reality fills them in. Time isn't a fixed track, but a medium that can be worked, shaped, sculpted. This is the model Morrison articulates most often, the magic mirror, the liquid information. Writing doesn't just describe, it programs. Framework 3. Collective. Egregores. Group mind entities fed by focused attention. A single practitioner charging a sigil once has limited power, but the Invisibles had thousands of readers engaging with the same narrative every month. Each reader's attention added charge. Each emotional response fed the working. Corporate logos function this way by accident. The McDonald's arches, the Nike swoosh. Persistent symbols fed by millions of daily interactions until they take on a life beyond their creators. The Hyper-Sigil does this deliberately. Here's my position. I don't know which framework is true. Probably some hybrid, possibly none. But the question that matters isn't metaphysical, it's practical. Does the method produce results? Morrison says yes. The scar says something happened. The question is what? Morrison didn't invent reality fiction bleeding. They systematized it. William S. Burroughs developed the cut-up technique in 1959 with painter Breon Gysin, physically cutting text and rearranging it at random. Burroughs believed language was a virus, an external control system. Cutting disrupted the signal, but it also revealed hidden information. When you cut into the present, Burroughs said, the future leaks out. He tested this, the Mocha Bar incident, 1972. After receiving poor service and worse cheesecake, Burroughs recorded sounds at the location, then repeatedly played back the recordings mixed with what he called trouble noises. Within months, the Mocha Bar closed. Burroughs taught these techniques to others as methods for altering reality. Whether the mechanism was psychological disruption, actual magic, or pure coincidence that the business failed on its own merits, the practitioners reported results. Philip K. Dick went further. In February 1974, following dental surgery, Dick experienced what he called anamnesis, the loss of forgetfulness. Visions triggered by a pharmacy worker's fish necklace. He perceived himself as simultaneously a first-century Christian named Thomas, saw California as ancient Rome. And here's the part that's hard to dismiss. Dick claimed the entity he called Valis informed him that his infant son had an undiagnosed inguinal hernia. Medical examination confirmed it. The child had surgery. Dick spent his remaining years producing approximately 8,000 pages of notes, the exegesis, trying to understand what had happened. He never concluded whether the experience was mystical revelation or psychiatric breakdown. Both options remained on the table. Alan Moore chose a stranger path. Moore deliberately chose to worship Glykon, a second-century snake puppet god that historical records confirm was a Roman charlatan's prop, a fake deity. Moore's reasoning, the big advantage of worshiping an actual glove puppet is that if things start to get unruly or out of hand, you can always put them back in the box. Moore works with what he calls idea space, a shared landscape where ideas exist as actual forms. His V for Vendetta mask becoming a global protest symbol represents fiction influencing reality. But Moore frames this as ideas propagating naturally rather than magical causation. The pattern across all three, creators who treated fiction as consequential reported consequences. The mechanism remains disputed. The correlation does not. The Hyper-Sigil concept scales beyond individual practice. Consider Slenderman, created in June 2009 for a Photoshop contest on the Something Awful forums. A user named Eric Knudsen posted 2 doctored photographs of a tall, faceless figure lurking near children. Fiction. Obvious fiction, labeled as fiction. The images spread, stories accreted. The Slenderman developed consistent attributes across thousands of independent contributors. Tall, faceless, tentacled, stalks children, drives victims to madness. In May 2014, 2 12-year-old girls in Waukesha, Wisconsin, stabbed their classmate 19 times. When asked why, they explained they needed to prove themselves to Slenderman, to demonstrate loyalty, to become his proxies. The classmates survived. The girls were tried as adults. A fiction created for entertainment had written itself into someone's nervous system so deeply they committed attempted murder to satisfy it. This isn't evidence that stories cause violence, only that attention, belief, and identity confuse in unstable minds with real consequences. This is what industrial-scale hyper-sigil looks like. The attention economy as distributed sigil charging. Every like, every share, every engagement adds charge to the narrative. Movements, brands, political identities, all running the same underlying code. Morrison warned about this. In pop magic, the hyper-sigil is an immensely powerful and sometimes dangerous method for actually altering reality in accordance with intent. Results can be remarkable and shocking. You don't have to believe in magic to notice that the stories you repeat start repeating in you. If hyper-sigils work by whatever mechanism, then the same principles that make them dangerous make them useful. First, audit. What narratives are currently running in your life? Which ones did you choose? Which ones did you inherit? Which ones did you absorb from media, from family, from culture without ever consciously agreeing to them? A hyper-sigil only executes if you wear the fiction suit. Many people are wearing suits they never chose, living out scripts written by parents, institutions, or algorithms. Noticing is the first step. You can't edit a program you don't know is running. Second, withdraw or redirect. Starve a narrative of attention and it loses power. This isn't suppression, it's resource allocation. Every hour you spend engaging with a story you don't want to live is an hour feeding that story. Alternatively, redirect. The fiction suit cuts both ways. Morrison wrote themselves into danger and wrote themselves out. You can do the same. Deliberately craft narratives where you win, where circumstances improve, where the version of you that exists at the end is the version you want to become. Third, build your own. Morrison's method is documented. The instructions are public. Pop magic is available online. The technique isn't proprietary. Write a story. Put yourself in it, under a different name, in a different context, but recognizably you. Make the character succeed. Make circumstances shift in their favor. Engage with the story regularly. Let others engage with it too if you want more charge. See what happens. This is mechanism, not endorsement. I'm not telling you to believe. I'm telling you the parameters of the experiment. Run it or don't. If you do, write in the exit. Grant Morrison survived. The face healed. The series ended with the world transformed and consciousness expanding into something larger than human. The final panel shows a character looking directly at the reader saying, "Our sentence is up." Sentence as in prison term. Sentence as in the words you're hearing right now. The Invisibles was a 6-year experiment in treating fiction as technology. The experimenter reported results, some desired, some nearly fatal. The mechanism remains unproven. The scar remains visible. The question isn't whether Morrison was right about how reality works. Plenty of smart people disagree. The question is simpler. What story have you been living inside without realizing you wrote yourself into it? And if you noticed, would you keep writing? The story ends here, but the signal doesn't. If this resonated, you've already participated. If it didn't, close the tab and let it decay. I'll be reading the comments. Whatever you do next, do it on purpose.